Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit of how campaign mode works by use of mission cards. I'm going to be playing as Marla the Miner. She's kind of like the mid-1800s version of Rosie the Riveter. She comes with a lantern and a pickaxe. It's one of her specials. So in campaign mode, this is particularly significant because you get 2 loot cards off the bat. The lantern is nice because if you play missions that are considered dark, dark missions give you a negative to almost any kind of roll, whereas the lantern, because it lights the area up, it negates that effect. Pretty simple mechanic, but it's definitely one that you have to pay attention to. The pickaxe is a melee weapon which gives you an additional plus to hit. So in a dark environment, she not only can illuminate the area and negate any penalties, but she also hits a little bit better on her own. She has 5 wounds that she can take, and then plus the fatal wound. So, I'm Marla, and I'm going to take point. I'm the mission leader here, noted by the blood drop. Now, if I was playing with other people around the table, of course, it'd be a little more, it'd make a little more sense for me to be on point. But that means I draw the mission card. I have to go on this mission. So I'm going to draw the mission card, and this is the Cemetery Gates, which requires the shovel or pickaxe. Fortunately enough, I have the pickaxe. The text here says, you come across an old graveyard. It looks to be for very wealthy people. You have a choice. So in some missions you'll have choices, options you can make, so you can play this a little bit differently. We can decide to be good and leave the graves alone. End the mission, get a loot, and the mission is over, get no other reward. So we get 1 loot if we just walk away and decide to be good people. The player with the shovel or pickaxe may attempt a skill roll. A skill roll is like an attack roll. You roll the dice, and if you get a 5 or a 6, which in this case I only got a 1, you would be considered to be skillful and you have achieved the goal. There are some players like Betty who have an additional bonus to skills. In fact, actually, even if you're playing as the Amazing Randy, he can actually toss loot to give people pluses to skill rolls. So there's definitely a lot of ways to benefit yourself in skills, and there's other cards and loot that'll help you out as well. So right now, with the way I'm loaded out, I'm pretty much at the mercy of what I can roll. So the player with the shovel or the pickaxe may attempt a skill roll. They get a +1 to hit with this roll for use of their tool. So normally you have to roll a 5 or a 6 to be considered successful. In this case, since I get the +1, I'd only have to roll a 4, 5, or 6. So basically I'm digging up a grave. A successful skill roll means no zombies are in the grave. So if I dig up the grave with my skill roll, if it's a successful roll, there's no zombies, I get my reward. A failed skill roll means you must draw a zombie card for each player on this mission. You must take 3 attempts at these graves. Once done, you collect your rewards. So just for finishing this mission, I hope I'm handing this to the screen right, there's no zombies off the bat. There's none extra that I have to draw. There's also no parts to be rewarded from this, which is kind of a bummer. This is just a loot only mission, which is kind of nice, especially if you're starting off. But there is loot. There's up to 3 loot that I can get from this here. So I'm going to put this mission card down. I'm on the mission. I need to get a 4, 5, or 6 since I have a pickaxe to be considered successful to not draw any zombies. I got a 4, so I get a loot for that. Yay. I would get a loot otherwise, but the problem is that if I get a 3 or less, I gotta fight a zombie or zombies. 1 for each person that would be on the mission. Considering this case here, it's just me, it's just the 1 zombie. 3, okay, so draw zombies. Now the one thing you want to make sure you've taken into note is on the player mat where your blood gem is at. So if you're here in the green, if you're still starting off, you wouldn't draw any extra zombies. But in the red, or the orange, or the red, you would draw the number underneath there as well. So this is one of those ones you don't want to go too empty-handed. But for the sake of the demo here, I'm going to say we're still at 0. This is our first mission. So I'm going to draw a zombie. It is a runner. You probably can't see it too well, but I'm going to put it up to the camera anyway. It is a runner. It is a 5-1 zombie, which means that it only hits me on a 5, and I only need 1 success in order to kill it. When you do combat, it starts on the player, then the zombies get their turn, and it would do the same to go around the table. I'm swinging a pickaxe, so I'm going to go ahead and try to swing it. I get a +1 to hit, a 4 does a success, I got a 1. 1s are always a fail. Now it's the zombie's turn to swing at me. He only needs a 5. Oh, he gets a 6. So I take my little tombstone, and now I have a wound. My turn on the runner. 4, chop. Now normally, if he had more wounds to take, I would just place the token on him as well to signify its damage, but he can only take 1 wound in the anywho, so he's a goner. I'll discard him. So that was 2 attempts. There's my dog. That was 2 attempts. Now I have 2 loot. Now I have 1 more attempt to make, and it's a 5, so it's successful, so I get the loot. Now it says here on the mission, the player must make 3 attempts at these graves. Once done, you collect your rewards. So I am done with that mission. I'm going to discard it, and I get my 3 loot. Got some med kits and some rations. These are all health items. Probably a good thing to have. Now my hands are full, so these loot cards have to go back to the camp where other people can get what they want. The other thing to remember is that per player you can only carry an additional 2 loot at camp, so it's good to find things like barrels, which expand your camp storage ability, and things like that. And so that would end a round. I would naturally move the gem, the blood gem at camp up 1, signifying the end of this phase. And once all players are done, that would be the end of one whole phase, and then we'd go on to the next round. Then somebody else would choose to take a point. And that person, if we say it's me, I take point again. We go on the next mission. We draw this here. Now this one says require 2+ players, which we don't have. So we would normally just say, well, I'm out. I took point, I'm out. If I don't have enough players, I'm done. Or if I opted not to go if I was one of the other players. Now the one thing is you cannot opt out to go if you can go and you're the point taker. So whoever's taking point needs to be in good health, have good loot. If you really want it to be your captain, so to speak. In a survival setting, that's what you would do. You would take whoever is the best fit to lead out first, and then they would bring along whomever they felt was the best. Now there are other characters with other abilities that you'll probably find to be quite handy. Rudy is kind of like John Henry, is what he's modeled after. Rudy he comes with a sledgehammer, so he already has this big maul, this big heavy sledgehammer, which is a nice two-handed loot. So if you have something that's two-handed, the loot card would sit in between the loot slots, signifying that it takes up both slots. But with Rudy, since he basically doesn't have wrists, he's got these tree trunk arms, he can one-hand any weapon. Now this is really cool, especially if you find a rifle or something like that that's a very powerful firearm, because then Rudy can melee up front close enemies and get the benefit of a melee weapon such as comboing. And he would also have the advantage of shooting over the top of other enemies with the firearm. So Rudy's ability comes into play once you have the right equipment. That's really fantastic. Other characters such as like Dr. Pitts is a healer. He comes with a doctor's bag, which allows you to absorb health or damage, actually absorb damage from other players. He can also attempt to save a life. If he's on a mission with the character and they die, he can try a skill roll. In this case here, the person would not have made it, but there's things like that you can use to bolster that effect. So he can actually save lives. Betty is just particularly tough. She's a flapper girl. She's a burlesque dancer, actually. Excuse me, not a flapper girl. History buffs, don't get mad at me. She's a burlesque dancer, and she actually has the most amount of health out of any character. She has 6, plus her fatal wound. And she gets +1 to all skill rolls. So naturally speaking, if she was attempting to dig up the grave and she had the pickaxe, she would actually hit on a 3 because she would get +1 and then +1 for the pickaxe. So if on a 3, and this is a 5, she would have hit. So she is extremely handy for absorbing damage and being able to perform feats. She's very agile. And she can take a punch. She's pretty amazing. Joe the Boxer, he's one of my favorites. He's the easiest player to get off the bat. Pretty much with Joe the Boxer, he gets a natural +1 as long as he's not carrying any loot. So no health items, no weapons, nothing. If he has nothing else on there, then he hits on a 4, a 5, or a 6. So he's got a pretty cool thing going on for him. He's very easy to work with. We said Amazing Randy earlier. If he tosses loot, you can give anybody at the table a +1 for everything. Mohawk comes with a 2-handed tomahawk. It's an awesome weapon. He can also give up an action to make sure that everyone else at the table can, that turn alone, re-roll any natural 1s they get. So if you rolled and you got a 1, you'd be like, oh, I can re-roll that because he has Warcry ability. Sheriff Brown comes with a revolver. Off the bat, he's very handy. He can also steal the blood dot. So if somebody else is taking point and they're not very healthy, if you start a mission and you decide that that person shouldn't be the first one to draw zombies, he can take it because he's a natural leader. And then Lee has 3 loot slots off the bat. Hopefully you can see that, giving him the ability to hold more loot. He can also take a look at the top 3 loot cards when you're going to draw loot and decide to discard or put back in whatever order of the loot he wants before you draw it. So you kind of get an advantage when it comes to loot. But that's the basic characters in the campaign setting, and how you would essentially use their abilities and fight. So hopefully that's helped you make a little bit of a better decision on choosing to back this product and salivated your mouth, got your taste buds going for Get to the Quarantine Zone.